Welcome, everybody. We are live in the Love Your Life tribe. Thank you so much for joining us. Today is a special day. We have a special guest, Kelly Marie Kerr, which we've had before. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are very excited. We've been talking about you throughout our lives every Wednesday, getting everybody ready. You know, it's coming in Elevation, and people are like, "Where's this book?" And they started reading the book, and they're just really excited about you coming. And I've had a few questions here and there, so we are very excited that you're here. So thank you so much for joining us.
I'm really excited to be back on here with you. Always a pleasure to see you, Joanna.
Thank you.
And yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's great.
Yeah, it's always great to have the insight of, especially when you're reading things that are very deep like this, that do impact your belief systems, that do really get you to question everything yourself, just how everything works. And it really, it's like a dismantling of your old paradigm and reconstructing it, right? And just it takes a lot of time, a lot of energy, and it's a process, because I know that even though I've read your first book, so she had the first book, The God Design. I don't know if you can see it. No, there we go. The God Design. All of your books, which are white, end up turning into makeup because they have so much makeup all over them. But the first one is about secrets of the mind, body, and soul. And so I always recommend everybody to start there because you do break down a lot of the layers in the Bible in such a way that I think it's easy to understand. And I think Elevation is a little bit different in the sense of, even though you're still breaking it down, now you're going straight into Revelation, the book of Revelation. So I wanted to ask you, what led you to go from the God Design to Elevation? What was, what insights, or what was it that got you from that first book to the second book?
Having been brought up a Christian, and, my own awakening, such a big part of that was learning to understand the allegorical symbols and metaphors in the Bible. The book of Revelation was definitely like one of the most important books for my personal journey. Firstly, because in my younger life, it was the book of the Bible that stirred, a large amount of fear within me and always made me feel like, oh my gosh, like, are the things that other people are saying about this book really true, in terms of the end of the earth and these, multiple-headed monsters coming down from the sky and out of the sea, etc. And I think as a young, person in church, like, my journey within the church started when I was 11 years old. Like, that is a lot for an 11-year-old to take on board as a literal story. Growing up with that kind of indoctrination is actually like quite a serious thing.
I've seen many people say that they shied away from the book of Revelation because of the fear, and because it was so, I guess, mythologically written, that it was very hard to understand. So I've seen many people run away from it because they don't understand it. So you, on your hand, you were like, no, let me go deeper into this.
Because I couldn't understand how, to me, like, God, the Bible aside, and all like, academia and theory stuff, like, aside, like, my personal relationship, like, with God was love. Unconditional love, unconditional understanding, like something or someone that, we can always talk to and turn to. Like, especially when I was younger, like, I really saw God as just an outside entity that was pure love. Now I understand it in a lot more of a deeper way, in terms of like through and in all. So I really didn't understand how a God of love could you know, be making these threats. It just didn't like really add up for me. And around the same time as I started writing the God design, because I had my revelation about the Kundalini, which is the sacred secretion, you know, which is the macabre, etc. I also started to understand that the chakras in Revelation, in the book of Revelation, were the chakras of the body, and, you know, just really started to connect a lot of dots for myself. And I'd also gone on a huge delve into history, to find the Essenes and to find, you know, theories that showed how the Greek book of the Apocalypse was an adaptation of like a Hindu manuscript. And so, you know, all of the roots from the book of Revelation are actually based in more Eastern traditions. So it was just really important to me. So around the same time as I was started writing the God design, I started doing a YouTube series about the book of Revelation. And I wasn't sure at the time, like when I first started doing it, like if I would go all the way through. I kind of had this tendency within my character that once I begin something, I can't stop until I reach the finish line. So I guess I knew on some level that I would do a video for each chapter. But then at some point on the way through making the video series, people started saying, I'd love to have this as a book. Because it's great to just have something like to hand that you can refer to, you know, to make references and to just remind yourself. Like, of course, like I feel the same about books. Like, I love my computer. I love like video content. You know, I love being able to like just kick back and turn something on and like listen to an audiobook. But the reason why I love tangible books is because for me, like I remember stuff in a certain way of like seeing where they were on like a page. So
you know exactly where to go to. I remember having that problem where I was like, okay, there's something that she said, because I had watched some of your videos and I was like, I don't remember what chapter it was and I don't remember this. And so I was going down the list of videos trying to find it. And that's, you know, I thought about it myself, like, oh, I wish there was a reference, but I didn't know that that was in the works.
Yeah, so I just thought, oh, I should do this as a book, you know, like, why not? I think I was quite naive at the time because I didn't really realize, like, with all things in my life, what I was kind of biting into, as it were, and, you know, how many prolific scholars have, like, been there, done that, and then like there's little old me coming in and going, well, I think so it was very daunting and definitely like overwhelming at times, but I'm really glad that it's done and it's out and people can take or leave, you know, what they want from it.
And a lot of people here are very excited. I have Michelle here saying thank you so much for sharing this book and this information with us all. I was afraid to read or study Revelation, but I love how Kelly breaks it down. So she started reading your book as well. And what I love about it is that the divine power of the human body, right? That's part of the book Elevation. And what I love, and especially the DNA, I've always been attracted to DNA, even when I was in middle school. And I remember learning, you know, deoxyribonucleic acid, and it stuck with me because it was such a long word. I'm like, I love that word. And it was sometime when I was in my dark night, you know, of the soul. And I was sitting there watching something and the word DNA came up in my mind, and I'm like, I'm going to research this more. And it started leading me down more rabbit holes. So the DNA has always been a thing for me. And so it's in the back of your book and everything. And I love how you go down all the way to the elements. My husband has been reading your book as well. And he was asking, he had this question. Let me pull it up real quick. He said, does someone's diet, and specifically the vitamins and minerals they ingest, help the process of enlightenment? Does a lack of sufficient vitamins and minerals suppress the process? Because you do break down everything into the minerals of it, and he was very loving the science behind it. So can you answer that question?
Yeah, 100%. Because our You know, the book of Revelation talks specifically about 4 layers of the body, which are the 4 horses. So the spiritual body is the white horse, the emotional body is the red horse, the intellectual body is the black horse, and the pale body is the physical, the pale horse, sorry, is the physical body. So, you know, the emotional body and the vibrations that we emit and that we feel and that we process can go a real long way to enlightenment. You know, waking up every morning and feeling thankful and really learning how to process things that maybe are like getting stuck within our tissues. Like, you know, it's true that our issues become our tissues. So if we're dealing with our issues, like we stand a better chance of just being in a real like good vibration to experience enlightenment. And that can go a really long way. And I do believe that that love in that way is the main key to it. But on a physical side with the minerals, it's really interesting because, you know, potassium, I just published a video last weekend about potassium being the main element that is involved with the crown of thorns or the crown of enlightenment. It's something like 85% of the world's population is deficient in potassium. And, you know, it's one of like the key elements on the periodic table. And when we think about things like sodium and potassium, and particularly magnesium is another like really basic key element that we need to function, like just our basic functions. It's definitely, you know, part of the process. And I think this is why a lot of the adepts and, you know, the gurus, as we call them, or, you know, the teachers who claim to have like experienced this and kind of become experts at it, were always fasting. Because when we detox all the acid from the body, what we do is put ourselves, our body becomes a clearer lens, because our water within our body is basically like the lens that is our download portal. You know, it's kind of like our camera from our sense body, between our sense body and our spiritual body. So if the waters of our soul aren't clear and don't have, you know, the right electrolytes in them, because, you know, potassium, sodium, magnesium, they're all electrolytes, so they all help with our conductivity as light beings. So by kind of tuning our physical body, our pale horse body, we really become better receivers. And, you know, it ties in again with, like, you know, nowadays it's so common to hear people talking about decalcifying the pineal gland. You know, it's very much common knowledge. 15 years ago, that wasn't the case. It was very much like, what are you talking about?
Conspiracy.
Yeah, so it's one and the same thing, you know, like the pineal gland, it has calcite crystals in it. Calcium is talked about a lot in the Bible, because it's part of what creates our piezoelectricity within our body. So by having these trace minerals or elements like more present within us, it's just a way of like honing,
harmonizing.
Each different part of the body. Each one of those horses deserves, you know, some attention when we're considering how to like really honor our bodies.
Would you say the cell salts would be a great way to start, as far as I think I have that book somewhere, but it's
yeah, I do. I do actually. Yeah.
Yeah, the cell salts that help us see what it is that we need most, based on
yeah, exactly. I can't remember who it was that has a really good YouTube video about discovering like which salts you would be likely to be deficient in, like based on your astrological chart. But there are videos like that that can easily be found, and I did find mine. But in the end, what I did was went back to just a more holistic view, and now I just take the combination 12, which is all of the 12 cell salts. And I also, when I fast, I take a supplement which is literally just potassium, sodium, and magnesium in like a glass of water. And it's actually incredible because of all the different supplements and different ways of fasting and diets that, you know, I've experimented with over the years. It's funny because it was only really when I started taking those 3 key salts that I really noticed a difference in the way that I felt physically, in terms of just feeling like lighter. I don't know if it's a Taurian trait to have like slow digestion or to like cling on to water, but I have always been a huge water retainer. And oh my gosh, when I was pregnant, like the pounds just piled on and on. My body was just clinging on to every single drop of water that I drank. But when I switched up and started taking the cell salts, it was almost like my body started functioning as it should have been functioning like the whole time, which I just was so grateful for, like as a moment in time to be like, yeah, this is it. This is great.
It's funny how you can't tell until you start seeing what you were missing before that you didn't know you were missing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a question. So I know that the introduction to your book was really long. I know people are like, well, how long have you been reading it? I'm like, I'm on chapter 2. And they're like, that's it. I'm like, that's 130 pages in. So the introduction is pretty long, but you are very detailed with the symbols, the 7 chakras, what the seals are, the return of Christ, the 144,000, all of that in the introduction to really break down and have like a summary, but really not a summary because it's so detailed, so that it helps us understand when you break down the chapters. And I love how you break them down, you know, 2 at a time for us to really digest, especially with your commentary. But can you give them a kind of like an example of how you break down, let's say, the return of Christ, let's say, in your book? That's a heavy one, but that's probably one a lot would like to hear for somebody who is brand new and is hearing this, because the way you explain it is very it's easy to digest. So for somebody new, how would you kind of explain how you explain it in your book? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like a summary of what you did in your book.
I mean, yeah, I deliberately chose to have like a first section that was, you know, a summary of each of the key themes before diving into chapter by chapter, because I also thought that as a reference book, it's really nice if you've just got this one question, like who are the 144,000, then you can easily just go to that, as opposed to having to find whereabouts it would be, you know, which chapter it would be in and finding it that way. So yeah, with the return of Christ, I mean, we're there, aren't we? Like we're kind of, it's like I feel like we're at a tipping point on these like huge scales of life where you've got a paradigm, or you've got like half of the world's population kind of believing one certain narrative, and you've got the other half who are like, that's not it. And that second half, you know, has been gradually growing and growing and getting bigger and bigger because of the enhancements of the Schumann resonance, because of the enhancements of the dodecahedron, the love energy that's in the atmosphere. So like gradually, whereas before it was like this and the mainstream was like the one and everyone brought into it, it's just been like tipping and tipping and tipping. And, you know, suddenly I think the last 2 years especially have shown us that we're really in this middle point where it's like, oh, is it going to go this way or is it going to go this way? But I feel 100% confident that we're moving into, you know, the real birth of Christ consciousness, the return of Christ. I don't believe that there is one, you know, specific person, and nor do I believe that the Bible says that there is one specific person who is the Christ. Maybe historically there was, you know, a really strong example of an avatar who came and was Jesus and did everything that, you know, they say Jesus did. Certainly that's fine. But for now, like, it would more be the case that what the book of Revelation is describing is the fact that we all have this innate ability. We all have the possibility to refine our raiment or to activate our DNA and to have vision, you know,
to be Christ-like, to
be Christ-like.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that really set Jesus apart was the, you know, the turn the other cheek and the compassion and the forgiveness. You know, before that, it was all like an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth kind of like mentality. So just by each of us realizing like our inherent capabilities, we collectively raise the vibration of our society for ourselves and for one another. So, you know, we end up living in a much better place for all of us. And it's funny because when we think about like what Jesus did and how, you know, we're all seeds of that same divine love, it's kind of like, of course, you know, when we like, God is the divine law. God is the, you know, unswerving, like perpetual law of justice. You know, call it a cosmic principle, call it a divine law, whatever, you know, language we like to use to describe it. It's like
no name, but
yeah, God doesn't care like what our opinions of it are. God, it still works in the same way. And like just like in every TV show, in every book that we've ever read, it says like if you're abusing your power, then, you know, you're gonna reap the consequences of that action. So it's very much like once we realize the power that we have and we learn how to work with it and we learn that it responds through love, then we become like the most ultimate manifestors. I mean, your book, Spring Manifestation, it's like, it's the same thing, right? Like when you realize that you have the ability as a creator to shape the world around you, to invite good things for yourself and for other people, to hold somebody in your mind and to speak truth over them and overcome illnesses and overcome depressions and all of these different things.
Help them see.
It makes total sense. Like there's just no other way. Like for me, like when I think about how I used to view prayer and you know, kind of segregation in terms of like, oh, I'm asking someone to do something for me. It's like, yeah, I guess in a sense, you know, the divine principle is still working through us. But it's more now about tuning into the vibration and understanding that, you know, we're all perfect children of the perfect parent, and that makes us like joint heirs with Jesus. So whatever the inheritance was that was due to Jesus as the Son of God, like that is also for us, because we are also sons and daughters of God in that same way.
And it's very, and you know, I look at the Bible and I see so many things of, you know, you could do the things I can do, for I've gone on to my Father, and he's trying to explain, you know, you're just like me and you can do these things and even better. But because religion and the doctrines and like church has instilled in people idolizing a man versus the Christ in you, it takes that power away from us, and we push it off onto this, you know, man, versus that divine essence and energy that we have within, that is Christ in you, you know, the hope and glory. So if that veil is slowly removing itself, they'll bring all of that awareness from the outside to the inside. I'm always talking about take it inward, go inward, go inward, so that you can understand these things. So in your whole entire journey, I would say, has your meditation strengthened the more that you have encountered these levels of elevation, or has it been very steady? Or what would you say your meditation practice has been like to be able to manifest, you know, what you have right now?
Yeah, it's changed. Yeah, 100%, like total eclipse, really. I mean, years ago, it was very much of a case of, you know, dear Lord, here I am before you, you know, and then XYZ, I'm struggling with this. Can you help me with that? You know, is there an answer? Whatever. Whereas now I still dialogue with, you know, what I call God, my inner hope and glory, a lot. It's kind of like a talking to the self, which is the cells. Because, you know, I really believe and understand now how the word is very much our power, you know, between our thoughts and what comes out of our mouths. Like, these are the ultimate tools for who we become, what our habits become, and where we end up, and what we invite into our lives, and who we invite into our lives.
Spell casting with our words.
Yeah, spell casting in every single moment of every single day. So I try to always spend time in silence when I meditate. And if I find it difficult to quieten my mind, I'll pick like a word like peace or light or love, and I'll just keep repeating that over and over and over until everything like kind of at least gives me, you know, it's very difficult when there's lots going on in life to find complete stillness, but at least to get to a place where you're more observing the thoughts going out, in and out, then you're actually like in the toil of the emotional moment of it still going on, you know, to just become being the able observer. Yeah, of like, okay, this is what I'm thinking about. And then being able to say, is this what I want to be thinking about? And to be able to get some perspective. I find that really important in meditation now. Affirmations, like I use on a daily basis, pretty much whenever I mean, it's become more of a habit. Like I find myself doing it sometimes when I'm like just driving to get Zach from school, or if I'm like, you know, trying to get to sleep at night, I'll just kind of be repeating like to myself, like, I am one with purity, I am one with love, I am infinite, I am whole, I am sacred. And anything that really like I can feel bringing my vibration up, and I can usually like feel it pretty straight away, because I'll get like a bit tingly and a bit like excited, like my body knows this is true, you know.
Yes. So, do you ever do that with scriptures? Like I have my tattoo of Matthew 6:22. If I be single, your whole body shall be filled with light. And I remember when they were doing the tattoo and the pain that I was feeling, and I was like, no. If I be single, everybody would feel it. I would continue saying it over and over. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to let the pain, you know, and I repeated it over and over. So sometimes, you know, I'll do that with certain scriptures, you know, the kingdom is within you. And I'll just repeat it over and over until I get to a place where there's no thought. Right. And it's that affirmation type of deal that sometimes I don't even know I'm doing it until I'm in the middle of doing it. And I'm like, oh, okay, we're doing this. Okay. So I found that has given me a way to kind of rest my monkey brain, right? Of thinking and overthinking and just sticking to one thought. And it's funny how when we say a scripture many times, we start looking at it differently. And, you know, then especially after reading your book and looking at all the layers of it, especially because you go into the layers of the human body, right? The Kundalini experience and the whole elevation or ascension journey. But then there's always the macrocosm, right? The astrological part of the stars and everything. So there's so many layers, and this is just one of them. So when I'm reading it, I'm looking at it from this perspective. And sometimes the macrocosm like kicks in and it's like, oh, look at the connection. And it's like, oh, this is so cool how it all connects. What has been your favorite part? Like mine has been the you talking about the main characters in the book and how they all relate to a specific, you know, part of the body, etc. Like the two witnesses and the left and the right. What has been your favorite revelation out of your entire book?
Wow, that's a really good question. Wow, I think understanding the baddies has been a real key for me, you know, like understanding the like how Satan comes into the mix and Lucifer and, you know, the Judas kind of faculty of us, because I think like there's this certain belief system where it's like, you know, everyone's ready to point a finger and go, that's satanic or that's Luciferian or whatever. And it's very like actually quite a delicate subject, because we all have these adversities within us, you know, like it's a constant, like it's like every day of our lives we're running and we're jumping over these hurdles and we're overcoming you know, these different like adversities that are part of our psyche. And at some point I kind of realized that Judas is very much our carnal mind, which, you know, is our animal body or our monkey brain, as you called it. And it's funny because I then found myself reading all of the separate stories that Judas like appears in and realizing that although we think of, you know, these traitors like as the real villains of the scenario, as the real bad guys, it's actually really important to realize how and when they try and look out for us, and to find a balance between what, if you take, you know, like a Disney film as an example, they always personify the animal brain with their animal sidekick. So you'll get like, you know, Flounder, for example, warning Ariel, no, don't do this. So it's like we have that, but it's just not we don't see it as separate because it's all going on inside us.
Right.
So it's kind of like listening to that Judas voice or that animal, that flounder voice, and giving it credence and saying like, you know, okay, I understand why you're warning me, and maybe there's some like wisdom in that, but then also taking it back to the Christ mind or the right brain and understanding, like, kind of putting the two together.
Yes.
So it's actually like a real melding of wisdom and instinct. Because
I haven't. Go ahead.
No, it's just like we've obviously been given these primal instinct and the animal brain for a reason. We have this Judas faculty for a reason, and we also have this like higher mind, and the two actually work wonderfully together. So it's like, don't just cancel one out just because it's perceived as being a baddie.
Right. It's the yin yang, and how together it's oneness, and it's that neutral, you know, having to be neutral. And I remember a story about the sun and the moon, right? Like, yes, the sun is good because it gives us, you know, we can see, but then it stops us from going inwardly. And then, you know, there's the night, and it helps us at night, but then it also doesn't allow us to see, etc. So there's, you know, the good and the bad and everything. And what you were just saying is so funny to me, because I, you know, in doing my counseling and things like that, I come across different tools to use for different things. And just yesterday, we used one as far as the emotions that were sitting at the table, who was sitting at the table. And, you know, one of them was mad. You know, what did mad have to say? And it's allowing mad to express itself and say why it's mad, but then coming back and going, okay, with the loving, wise adult, how can we make mad feel better? You know, is it by allowing it to do something that, you know, what do you have control of doing? What can you do? And then flipping that, and it's going, allowing mad to speak and have its voice, but then also the reassurance, which is the Christ mind, you know, the reassurance of, and then having that harmony, which a lot of people are pushing away their darkness, not wanting to see it and brushing it under the rug. And I think that's what the last 2 years have brought to us, is people having to look under the rug because it was getting piled up, and they have nowhere to go, and they have to look at this and go, okay, what is it that you need to say that I've been ignoring? So yes, it's basically the ego and the spirit, the whole story that's written in the stars, the ego and the spirit, the cardinal mind and the higher self. So yeah, it's, I guess, a revelation of your own ego and higher self, right? As you've written the whole entire story. I mean, because you're really deeply studying and deeper than anyone. I mean, I should say, in a sense, when you're having to write a book to describe it. And so you've put your whole entire cardinal mind and higher self into this book, I should say. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And I think there were certainly times while I was writing it that I was like, you know, either consciously or subconsciously, like drawing from my own experiences of pain, of anger, of, you know, knowing or recognizing when, you know, certain parts of like my emotional ego like would kind of get out of control in a way, and also when it's been too heavily suppressed. What I realized about myself, because I went through depression, like, I mean, it was a good few years ago now. I had an accident at work where I was knocked unconscious and I couldn't work, and before that I was doing all kinds of like cool stuff, and I was really like happy in my job and in my life, and it just really sent me into a spin. I couldn't earn any money. Like, I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm going to lose this roof over my head. And what I didn't realize was that accident was actually a catalyst for me to address a lot of the deeper, you know, challenges that I had like faced through my childhood, through growing up and different things, and realizing that because I had been so heavily silenced as a child and always told to be quiet, always, 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 what I had learned to do was to silence myself. And so this whole like you know, the God Design, my YouTube channel, this book, like it's all been
You're
very
like,
much an uncensoring of like,
you're like, let me
all of the
express myself. You know, it's funny. I think a lot of us writers, I mean, I guess I'm putting myself in there, but I said in my book, you know, how all this time I had felt like misunderstood and not heard and like just silenced, like you said, like I had a throat chakra issue.
yeah.
And then writing it was like a way to just go, here I am. I'm putting out what you're taking in. You're hearing me. And now I feel like I feel heard. So in a sense, like we had to experience the opposite in order to want to get out of that and just and like let it all out, or else you wouldn't have all these books and we wouldn't be, you know, talking about truth and all these really deep subjects that our censoring ship growing up helped us let it out.
And when you talk about tools, like, you know, within your counseling, I'm definitely going to like use the Who's at the Table, by the way. It's so cool. But one of the things I like to do that reading the book of Revelation actually like helped me kind of like come up with is like I kind of have a conference with my four selves. So it's like, right, hello, spiritual body, hello, emotional body, hello, intellectual body, hello, physical body. How are you all feeling today? Yeah. You know, physical body, well, you know, you fed me too much chocolate yesterday. So actually I have a bit of a sugar hangover and I wish you hadn't have done that to me. So then like, you know, oh, hello, emotional body. Why did we do that? Oh, well, we were feeling a bit low and you know, that I felt like the chocolate was really going to help, but actually, you know, it didn't. Like, and it kind of, it all becomes like very much
like you're helping each other.
Yeah. And I think somewhere during that process, I realized that, you know, finding my voice is very much like, or for anyone finding their voice is very much like almost an apology to self, for allowing like other people's opinions to actually censor you, you know, to say like, I really honor that you have these opinions and I really honor your emotions because they are valid. And I understand that you feel this way for a reason. And together we are going to find a way to express ourselves that makes all of us or whole like feel happy and feel good. So it's kind of like this team conference between each different aspect, I guess.
Yes, I love it. And it's just all you and
I don't know. Yeah, and you're frozen.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Is that me or you?
I don't know. I don't know who's frozen. Can you hear me? Let me see on the live. I don't know what's going on. Can you hear me? Hello? Let's see. We can see you both not frozen. See, on my end, she's spinning. Oh. Let's see if she comes back, guys. So she's frozen. Oh, she went away. She'll be back. What do you guys think so far? I have not given you guys a chance to, or not giving you guys a chance, but I haven't read you guys' comments or anything, but she's back. Give me just a second here. There we go.
Sorry, I don't know what happened there.
Like... Yeah, we were kind of frozen, but not. There we go. Okay, so you're back. What were you saying?
Yeah, so I'm not sure whereabouts I cut out, but it's very much like I find nowadays I'm more open to, in my meditations, just listening to like what each different part of me, what's going on, you know, so that I can find a way to holistically like navigate the best way through things.
Working together simultaneously as one. And, you know, it's funny because you brought up the white horse. you know, in the beginning being spirit, and how when it's the return of Christ, it's in a white horse. And so that right there is telling you, you know, this is a spiritual type of allegory, I should say. And it's all those key points that really help us awaken to see how all those four horses are come together and how it's all us in a sense. But yeah, do you have anything that you want to say about your book or about this whole journey of yours, that you would like somebody to take out of this? I have so many people saying that they love your book, that it's very important to digest it slowly. Love the affirmations. She's amazing. Yeah, got to be ready and prepared to digest all this information. So, you know, because it is a lot of information. So what is something that you would like to share to those that are trying to digest it and are very, they're desiring to understand, but just not quite there yet?
I think it's just to allow ourselves to be at the place where we're at and to be thankful, like, for the place that we're at, because when we come into that place of acceptance and gratitude of what is, like, I think that's one of the keys to really unlocking the receivership.
Yeah.
You know, and if there's something that you don't particularly understand or doesn't resonate at a certain time, like, that's fine. Don't beat yourself up over that or feel like, oh, I wish I knew this stuff and I wish, like, my, you know, intellect could understand all of this, like, because there's always more to learn, always. Like, you know, I had to, like, keep cutting this book because, you know, it could have been so much bigger, and I tried to be as ruthless as I could with it, in terms of just trying to make it simple and digestible. But I think even for me personally, like, we can actually get into kind of trouble egotistically, like, if we think we've come to a place where we're like, oh, I've got this now, you know, because then we kind of take away the space for growth in our own psyche. Whereas if we're always, like, in a place of receivership to say, you know, show me more, it's kind of like that that iceberg scenario, you know, where, like, you only have, like, the tip of the iceberg shown out of the water, and then under the surface there's this huge, like, cavity of ice. I think that's what knowledge is like for us humans. You know, I think we can know a lot and we think we can come, like, a really long way, and we can. But also, like, I equally think that there will always be more to learn. And I think that in a way, it's better that we each have, like, our individual perspectives and individual ways of understanding things than trying to, like, do this one size fits all thing, you know, which has never worked in any of, you know, the times in history.
We talked about that in a comment somewhere, and I think it sparked from your book because I mentioned it, and someone said that, you know, they gave me the verse about not replicating it, not adding to it, not, you know, changing the verse, and so then I went to your book to look at what the actual, you know, what the interpretation was, and I'm sitting there thinking how there's so many different books already of the same thing, and how at the end of the day it still comes down to interpretation of how you read certain words and how you take them. You know, it still comes down to interpretation, which then tells you it comes down to your discernment, and it comes down to your soul recognizing truth and taking in what it needs to take that might have been a an empty piece of the puzzle that was missing, that you just, it makes everything make sense. So, I mean, I think some people haven't really gotten to the point of understanding the energy behind the words. So it's interesting how it can spark so many different conversations just by that one.
It's definitely, when you think of that one scripture, like in the King James version of, you know, do not like alter these words. It's funny because from my perspective, I would say that those old English like scriptures actually like distort the true meaning. But it's because we're living in a completely different era now, where that old language doesn't make much sense to us, and we don't speak in parables anymore. You know, like we want to know what's what. So it's like kind of ironic that it's saying don't, you know, misinform, because I mean, the one thing that I ever try and make sure that I'm being really careful about is to make sure that I'm coming from a place of, you know, not just being well educated or not misleading people, but also a place of like spiritual discernment, where I would never want to like lead anybody astray or, you know, take anyone away from like the essence of what love is and of what God is and what our true capabilities are as children of, you know, a divine creator. Like,
that's where it comes down to discernment. And it's like, it's my choice whether I want to watch all your videos, read all your books, and you know, listen to everything you have to say. It's my choice based on everything that I've already learned and known to be true. Others, it may not, and they might not be on that path yet, or they might not be, you know, on that journey at all this, you know, lifetime. But it's everyone's choice ultimately what they digest, what they put in. So I personally thank you for everything that you put out, because it's again, amazing the breakdown that you give. It's easy to shift the paradigm based on how you put it, and it's needed. And so from everybody out there, we thank you for all of this information.
Thank you. That's really nice.
Yeah. So I don't want to take up too much of your time. It's almost an hour. So is there anything else you'd like to say? Some people are so grateful for your work. Is there anything you'd like to say to anybody you'd like to?
No, I mean, I just like to say thank you to you, and, you know, thank you like to everyone who is kind of on this path. You know, I certainly wouldn't be in the place that I'm in if it wasn't for other truth seekers and, you know, other pioneers of biblical allegory that have come before. Yeah, like we're all in this together.
We're all doing our part, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I always hold dearly like one for all and all for one, because that's not just talking about all for one as in all of us for goodness, for God, and goodness for all of us, but it's also talking about, you know, like me for you, you for me, like all of us as brothers and sisters. So I think that's what's going to ultimately like help to propel us more into the new heaven and the new earth consciousness, unity consciousness that's mentioned in the book of Revelation. Because when we see New Jerusalem and we realize that that is our love faculty, our compassion faculty being fully realized and fully unleashed into the world, and that we have absolutely nothing to gain by being scared of each other or by trying to push each other down, but actually everything to gain by encouraging one another and lifting one another up in love, then
that's what's going to raise that Christ consciousness, and until eventually we are all in that golden state.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We really enjoyed it. This is going to be the last time I do an interview in the Love Your Life tribe. We're shifting. But so, I mean, a great way to end it. We're just shifting and growing, so I'm gonna announce it pretty soon after next week. But yeah, this has been great, and I cannot wait for everybody to buy your book. Let me put on here. We have Elevation is the book that she just not released, but if you do not have the God Design, please get that, because they even have, you have the audio version on that as well, right? And then she's Seek Vision on YouTube, or Kelly Marie Kerr. Either way, you can find her. And is there any other ways that they can find you?
No, that's the main. Yeah, so Seek Vision is my website. Yeah, YouTube is just under my name, Kelly Marie Kerr. I have a yoga app, which is for Apple and for Android, which is just called Freedom Yoga. There's a free version of that, so if anyone's like looking for guidance, just as a way to like add like a little bit of practice to their day. The yoga has like affirmations actually like written into the practice for each pose, so you know, it's like just built to be like a real vibe raiser. So whilst we're working on the physical body, we're also working on the mental and the emotional and the spiritual at the same time.
Yay. So yes, get you some of her, because she is amazing. And yeah, I can't wait to speak to you sometime again after I read it and I go in your DM and I'm like, oh my God. Because I know every time I read a portion of it, it's like, and then I need time to digest, you know. So yes, I really appreciate it. Thank you for joining us. And guys, we will see you guys next Wednesday in the Love Your Life Tribe. Bye.